At exactly 2:17 a.m., an underground security alarm was triggered beneath one of the most exclusive private storage facilities in the city. No guards were attacked. No doors were forced open from the outside. Nothing appeared broken. Yet by morning, one man would be dead inside the building, and several high-value items officially recorded as stolen would be gone. The man's name was Ethan Cole. Ethan did not work there. He wasn't a client. And he wasn't supposed to be inside that building at all. The facility stored luxury items that didn't belong in banks, rare watches, historical artifacts, sealed private collections. Everything was kept underground. Out of sight. Out of reach. Sometime after midnight, Ethan entered the building from below. Over several weeks, a tunnel had been dug beneath the foundation, giving direct access to the vault level. From the outside, nothing looked disturbed. From the inside, security systems remained silent. According to investigators, Ethan moved through the vault deliberately. He didn't grab everything. He selected specific items later confirmed missing. Then, at 2:17 a.m., everything changed. A single sensor was triggered. Within seconds, the facility entered full lockdown. Laser security grids activated. Steel access points sealed automatically. Emergency lighting replaced the normal interior lights. Ethan never exited the building. When staff arrived the next morning, they found his body inside the vault. The tunnel was still intact. The vault doors were still sealed. The alarm system was still active, but the items Ethan had taken, several of them were gone. Ethan Cole broke into the building. He triggered the security system. He died inside. So, investigators were left with one question they could not ignore. If Ethan never made it out alive, who walked away with the loot? Ethan Cole did not stumble into this crime. Nothing about the break-in was impulsive. In the weeks leading up to that night, he studied the building from a distance. He watched staff routines. He noted delivery times. He learned when the underground area was least active. More importantly, he focused on what he believed was the facility's biggest weakness. Not the vault, not the guards, but the ground beneath it. According to investigators, Ethan was convinced that the security systems protecting the building were designed to stop intruders at the surface level. Motion sensors, cameras, access cards. He believed that once someone bypassed those systems and reached the vault from below, the rest would be simple. Get in. Take the items. Get out the same way. The tunnel was the key. It allowed him to avoid every visible security measure the building advertised. No alarms sounded when he entered. No alerts were sent to security personnel. For Ethan, that confirmed what he already believed. That the tunnel was the only real obstacle. What he didn't account for was what happened after entry. The building's most aggressive security measures were not designed to prevent access. They were designed to respond to contact. Specifically, contact with certain items inside the vault. Ethan assumed the valuables were passive. That once he reached them, they were just objects, expensive, yes, but inert. He was wrong. Some items were individually protected. Not by visible locks, but by proximity sensors tied directly into the building's lockdown system. The moment one of those items was disturbed, the facility would no longer behave like a storage space. It would behave like a containment zone. Ethan believed he had planned for everything. He had tools. He had a clear exit route. He had time. What he did not have was knowledge of what the building was designed to do once someone touched the wrong thing. And by the time he realized that mistake, the plan he thought he controlled no longer belonged to him. The moment the security system went into full lockdown, protocol should have taken over. At least, that's what the facility's own documents stated. When an internal alarm is triggered at that level, on-site security is required to respond. Not remotely. Physically. Guards are meant to check access points. Inspect the underground level. Confirm whether the alert was accidental or active. But that night, none of that happened. The alarm registered at 2:17 a.m. It was logged. Acknowledged. And then nothing. No security personnel entered the vault area. No physical sweep was conducted. No emergency call was placed. According to later statements, the alert was categorized as a system trigger, not an intrusion. In other words, the building reacted, but the people responsible for it did not. Inside the vault, Ethan Cole was already trying to escape. The tunnel he came through was sealed. Alternative exits were blocked by automated barriers. Laser grids forced him to crawl, slow down, and change direction repeatedly. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because when investigators later cataloged what Ethan had taken, they noticed something immediately. Among the missing items was a single object of exceptional value. Not cash. Not watches. A blue diamond, unofficially known among private collectors as the Calder Stone. It weighed just over 30 carats. Uncut. Uninsured. And worth tens of millions. The Calder Stone was stored separately from the other valuables. Its housing was discreet, but its security profile was not. That diamond was tied directly to the lockdown system. Which meant one thing. The moment Ethan touched it, the building reacted exactly as designed. So, the question became unavoidable. If the security system was sophisticated enough to lock down the building in seconds, why was it not sophisticated enough to bring a human being to the scene? And the questions didn't stop there. When police reviewed the CCTV footage, the problem became even clearer. Cameras showed Ethan entering the vault area. They showed the moment the lockdown engaged. And then gaps. Several minutes of footage were missing. Not corrupted. Not blurred. Missing. The time gap aligned perfectly with the moment the Calder Stone disappeared. Those cameras resumed recording later, showing an empty corridor and no sign of the diamond. Someone had access to the system. Someone either disabled the cameras or removed the footage entirely. And whoever did it knew exactly when to do it. Because there was no visible sign of a second intruder. No recorded exit. No alarm triggered at the perimeter, which raised a question no one wanted to answer out loud. If the building was fully sealed and heavily guarded, how did the most valuable item inside disappear? And more importantly, who made sure no one was watching when it did? The discovery was made just after 7:40 a.m. Morning staff arrived expecting a routine shift. The building was quiet. From the outside, everything looked normal. But the underground alarm was still active. That alone was unusual. Lockdown systems were designed to reset automatically once an alert was cleared. This one hadn't. Security supervisors were notified, and a small response team was sent below ground. When they reached the vault level, the first thing they noticed was the silence. No movement. No system prompts. Just emergency lighting and sealed access points. Then they saw the body. Ethan Cole was lying on the floor near the central vault corridor. There were no restraints. No visible weapon. No sign of a struggle with another person. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Police were called immediately, and the facility was placed under temporary lockdown, this time by human hands. At first, the situation appeared straightforward. A man had broken in, triggered the security system, died before he could escape. But as investigators began documenting the scene, cracks appeared almost immediately. The tunnel was still there. It had not collapsed. It had not been blocked from the outside. Yet from inside the building, it was completely sealed. There was no sign that Ethan had reopened it. No indication he had come close. Which meant his escape route had failed early. Then came the inventory. Facility records showed exactly what was stored in each vault. Each item was logged. Each movement time-stamped. When investigators compared those records to what was physically present, the discrepancy became impossible to ignore. Several items Ethan had accessed were gone. Not displaced. Not dropped nearby. Gone. Most importantly, the Calder stone was missing. The blue diamond that had triggered the lockdown system was nowhere to be found. Its protective housing was open. Its sensors had activated exactly as designed. But the diamond itself had vanished. That discovery changed everything. Because if Ethan died inside the building and never made it out, then someone else had to have removed the Calder stone. There were only two possibilities. Either the building was not as sealed as everyone believed, or someone with authorized access had entered after the lockdown and left without triggering a single alarm. Investigators expanded the scope of the case immediately. What had started as a burglary gone wrong was now treated as a coordinated operation. Attention shifted away from Ethan's actions and toward everyone who had been inside or near the building that night. Because one thing was now certain: Ethan Cole did not walk out with the diamond. Someone else did. Once the missing diamond was confirmed, investigators turned to the one thing that was supposed to eliminate uncertainty: the cameras. The facility was covered by a layered surveillance system. Fixed cameras in hallways, motion-activated units near vaults, time-stamped recordings stored both locally and on a remote server. On paper, there were no blind spots. The footage from that night began normally. Cameras showed Ethan Cole entering the underground level. They showed him moving through the vault corridor. They showed him accessing multiple storage units. The timeline matched the alarm log. Then, at 2:17 a.m., the footage changed. The lockdown was visible, lights switching, barriers deploying, systems engaging, and then, without warning, the recording skipped. Not a few seconds. Several minutes. When the footage resumed, the corridor was empty. No Ethan. No sign of movement. No Calder stone. The gap was precise. Investigators noted that the missing segment aligned exactly with the window between the lockdown activation and the point when Ethan's body was later discovered. That alone was troubling. But what made it worse was how the footage behaved. This wasn't a camera failure. The video did not glitch. It did not distort. It did not freeze. The file simply jumped forward in time. As if those minutes had been deliberately removed, technicians examined the system logs. There was no record of a power outage. No evidence of hardware malfunction. No automatic overwrite. The deletion required access. Administrative access. Someone would have needed credentials and knowledge of how the system archived footage, which immediately narrowed the field. Only a small number of people had that level of clearance. Security supervisors. System administrators. Upper management. Not guards. Not janitorial staff. Not outside contractors. And yet, none of those people reported accessing the system that night. Everyone denied involvement. Investigators checked the perimeter cameras next. Exterior footage showed no one entering the building after the lockdown. No forced doors. No alarms at the surface level. But one detail stood out. A vehicle was parked near the facility during the early hours of the morning. It wasn't unusual for cars to be in the area. But this one remained stationary longer than expected. It arrived shortly before the alarm and left not long after. At the time, no one connected it to the crime, because there was still one major problem. There was no recorded exit. No camera showed anyone leaving the underground vault with the diamond. No camera showed anyone entering to retrieve it. Which meant one of two things had to be true. Either the Calder stone left the building through a route not covered by cameras, or the cameras were deliberately blinded at the exact moment it was removed. Both possibilities were equally disturbing. because both required inside knowledge. The more investigators reviewed the footage, the clearer it became. The cameras had not failed the system. They had been bypassed. And whoever did it knew precisely when to act, and how much time they had before anyone noticed. At that point, the case stopped being about how Ethan Cole died. It became about who else was in control that night, and what they didn't want seen. Once it became clear that the Calderstone had been removed during a missing window of surveillance footage, the investigation widened carefully and quietly. Detectives stopped treating the case as a burglary gone wrong. They began treating it as a coordinated operation. The first step was access. Investigators compiled a list of everyone who could have entered the building after the lockdown or altered what the cameras recorded. The list was short: security supervisors, the overnight shift manager, 2 senior systems engineers responsible for surveillance maintenance. Everyone else was ruled out immediately. None of the guards had the clearance to disable cameras. None of the maintenance staff had access to the vault level during a lockdown. And no outside contractor had been scheduled that night. Every person on that list was interviewed. Every one of them denied being in the vault area, denied accessing the camera system, denied even knowing which item had triggered the lockdown. At first, their stories aligned. Too perfect. The same phrasing. The same timelines. The same explanation that the alarm was classified as a false trigger, and protocol did not require a physical check. That explanation raised more concern than it resolved. Because the lockdown that activated that night was not a minor alert. It was the highest level internal response the system had. That part was never meant to succeed. Because once the lockdown engaged, the building behaved exactly as designed. It sealed itself. No one in. No one out. But that assumption only applied to physical movement. Digitally, the system was still exposed. Noah Reed had designed the original surveillance framework years earlier. He knew where the redundancies were, which feeds looped, which alerts could be acknowledged remotely without dispatching guards. And most importantly, he knew how to access the system without entering the building. When the lockdown activated, Noah logged in remotely, using credentials that were supposed to be inactive. From that access point, he could see what the cameras saw, including Ethan inside the vault. Investigators later concluded that Noah watched as Ethan realized he was trapped. The missing CCTV footage wasn't accidental. It wasn't random. It was removed because it showed something that would have raised immediate questions. The Calderstone leaving the vault while Ethan was still inside. The diamond was never carried out through a main corridor. It was transferred through a secondary internal route. One designed for secure item relocation during emergencies. That route bypassed public corridors entirely, and only one type of person could authorize its use: someone with system-level control. By the time Ethan collapsed, the Calderstone was already gone. The alarm served its purpose. Security focused inward. Investigators focused on the dead man. The narrative wrote itself. A thief broke in, triggered the system, paid the price. No one thought to ask how the most valuable item vanished during a total lockdown. Because the crime had already explained itself. The brilliance of the plan wasn't in escaping. It was in ensuring no one looked beyond the obvious. Ethan Cole died believing he was in control of the crime. In reality, he had never been anything more than a cover. For weeks, the investigation appeared to stall. Noah Reed was questioned repeatedly. His digital access raised concerns, but it wasn't enough. There was no footage of him inside the building. No physical evidence placing the Calderstone in his possession. And no witness who could say, with certainty, that he had removed it. Legally, the case was slipping. Attention slowly shifted back to the facility itself, its procedures, its failures, its silence. That's when investigators decided to take a different approach. Instead of asking who could have done this, they asked who had the least reason to be suspected. They reviewed guard logs again. Not for gaps, but for consistency. One name appeared everywhere: Samuel Grant. Samuel was a senior night security officer. Well-liked. Reliable. He had worked at the facility for years without incident. On the night of the break-in, Samuel followed protocol perfectly. He acknowledged the alarm, logged it as a system trigger, filed his report on time. Too perfectly. Investigators noticed that Samuel never physically checked the underground level, something he was authorized to do, but not strictly required. At first, that seemed like laziness. Then they noticed something else. Samuel's access badge had been used during the missing CCTV window, not to enter the vault, but to authorize an internal transfer route. A route meant only for emergency relocation of high-value items. When questioned, Samuel insisted he didn't remember using it. He said he had been at his desk. But desk cameras told a different story. He wasn't alone. Someone stood just outside the frame, close enough to speak, close enough to be heard, but never fully visible. That person was not Noah Reed. It was the facility's operations manager, Claire Whitman. Claire Whitman had never been a suspect. She had no criminal record, no financial red flags, no reason, on paper, to steal a diamond worth millions. But she had something no one else did: complete knowledge of the facility's emergency protocols, and a quiet authority over everyone who worked there. Investigators uncovered encrypted communications between Claire and Noah Reed dating back months. Not planning the break-in, planning the response. Ethan Cole was never the partner. He was the distraction. Claire ensured security stood down. Samuel provided access he didn't fully understand. Noah handled the digital blind spots. And the Calder stone was removed legally. On paper. Transferred during an emergency containment event that never officially existed. By the time Ethan died, the diamond was already gone. Samuel Grant cooperated once confronted with the evidence. He admitted he believed he was following instructions, that the request came from above. Claire Whitman denied everything, until the car outside the facility was traced back to her private driver. The unexpected truth wasn't that the system failed. It was that the system worked for the wrong people. Ethan Cole died inside a vault he was never meant to escape, and the person who walked away with the Calder stone was the one trusted to keep it safe. If you've made it this far, you already know this wasn't just a failed break-in. It was a crime that worked because no one questioned the people who were trusted most. This channel exists for cases like this. The ones where the truth isn't hidden by violence, but by procedure, authority, and silence. If you want more stories that dig into how perfect crimes are built, you can subscribe. And if you have your own theory about when this plan truly began, leave it in the comments. Sometimes the most dangerous criminals are the ones who never step inside the crime scene.